I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
States of
America and
to
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
We don't have any adjustments to the agenda tonight.
Okay. We now have an opportunity for public comment, public input. It's an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, okay, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
I move to approve going into executive session to consider the possible expulsion of a student pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056B.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Howell will call the roll.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Janie Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
I'm going to recuse myself from this executive session.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Anna Keeney, Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yes.
Christina Small.
Yes.
Okay, we're in executive session.
Okay, so so the person listening right now, we will be back. If you log out and come back in, the meeting will be on hold until we rejoin.
It's
Sorry,
just me tonight.
Just you, okay, perfect.
It's just
And
me,
it's
yeah.
never just you.
No, but I am going to represent everyone this evening. How's that?
Great. Okay, thank you. We'll now have a presentation by Christine Hessler, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, our CIA person, about math implementation.
Thank you, Janie, and thank you to everybody for inviting me to come tonight and talk about our first year of implementation of our new math program. For the past few years, this has been a trend of us working together and coming up with a plan to improve our math instruction. And so if it's okay, Chris, I'm going to share my screen. I'm also going to share with the board that I will have Terry send out this PowerPoint presentation so that you have it to review afterwards. With the ability of doing Zoom and the wording, I want to make sure all of you have everything in your hands tomorrow in case you have further questions. But I think I can share my screen, Mr. Howell.
I just made you co-host, so you should be able to.
Okay. Let's check one thing here. I just want to make sure it's showing. Oh, okay. Let's see. I can never see what you're seeing, so I think we're good. Okay. So I'd like to remind the board and the public our overarching goals that we have with our math implementation. So the decisions that we've made are based on our RSU 14 math philosophy. The rigor in mathematics instruction is a balance between conceptual oops, wow, that was quick. Sorry about that. Didn't realize the buttons were gonna change over on me. And apologize about that. Between conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and application. And we also are striving for consistent and equitable experience for students and the mastery of our Common Core math content standards throughout the engagement of the Common Core standards math practice standards as well. Our math philosophy, as we've reviewed before, is that all students in RSU 14 will demonstrate logical thinking and reasoning to solve challenging problems, as well as understand and apply mathematical procedures in a variety of settings. Our instruction will prepare students for continued study and practice in their personal and professional lives. And that's what we've based all our decisions on through our committee work. So the one thing I would like to review with all of you are the standards for mathematical practice, which my two brilliant math coaches that all of you have heard from helped put together this entire presentation. And some of the things that we're having our students engage in this year are making sense of the problem and persevering in them, being able to think about what makes sense, talk and explain, showing your work and making models, using the right tools, checking their work, which is attending to precision and seeing patterns and connections. And the last one is looking to explore how these connections are in real life. So along with those, we are engaged in effective mathematics teaching practices with our staff. And this is where a lot of the professional development weekly and with Ready Math and CPM trainers have come into play. All of these 8 pieces are where staff are beginning to dabble in. Number 4 is our biggest one with our biggest push this year, which is facilitate meaningful mathematical discourse. How do we ask students questions? How do they ask questions back? How do we facilitate those discussions to deepen our meaning of mathematics while touching on the other 7 as cornerstones in our teaching practices? So in this presentation, both Patty and Ellen helped me outline how do we tell the story after year 1. And so we grounded this presentation to involve student successes, parent successes, and teacher successes. And then on the flip side, we've done the same of some challenges that we've had, and then we'll review the work that we've done and where we'd like to go moving forward. And so our student successes really are the growing understanding of mathematical concepts through exploration, moving from that concrete to pictorial and then the abstract. Procedural fluency based on number sets and conceptual understanding. Engagement in routines that allows students to see what the numbers are really about and the relationships to solve problems. Bringing real world connections that bring meaning to mathematics, and discourse. Again, the questioning techniques, the conversations we have around mathematics that empower students to take risks, formulate solutions to problems, and justify their reasoning in questions and connections and reasonings of others. This little 1-minute video, which I'm hoping is plays, I want to set the stage for you. I know Janie has heard about this, and I might think Kate has heard about it, but this is a grade 1 classroom this winter taking the diagnostic test. And I want you to notice a couple of things. Each of the students has a toolkit with them that the teacher has worked on with them all fall. So you're going to see a wide array of ways that students are solving the individual problems that they are taking at that testing point. So they're on the diagnostic, which is, again, adjusting to the student's answers. And so it's customized to them. They all have their headphones on, and what you're going to notice is a little bit of chatter, and they don't even hear each other talking because they are working by themselves and using all the different tools that they have in front of them. So I'm going to, hopefully this will play. Come on, here we go.
Look at them all engaged and all working. That is so amazing.
And the different tools they're using to solve whatever they're
right.
working on.
Great.
So as you can see, it's amazing for us to look and see this is the change in what first graders are actually able to do as they are persevering through a problem. Some were making tally marks, some were using the Unifix cubes, all the different strategies to solve their individual problems. What we didn't see is sometimes you traditionally see kids going through an online test and they're just pushing the button. Going and just making a guess. Kids were actually trying to really do this. And again, you could hear the teacher at one point when you heard a little boy say, "This is hard," and she said, "Well, use your toolkit." So you know those routines have been set up in that classroom ahead of time, which is a great way to show the different ways that they're thinking about mathematics. And so some teacher successes for K-5. We've seen a big deepening of understanding of the mathematical concepts. And how they lead to procedural fluency and problem solving. Renewed conversation among buildings, grade levels, on and about math content and instruction. The establishment of new routines that promote mathematical and practices and engage all students that build that conceptual understanding. Greater use of manipulatives. I think that's one of the biggest pieces we've seen, and mathematical representations to build understandings. Lots of differentiation through games and independent use of the iReady pathways. And the focus is on student thinking rather than the correct answer or just the checklist that they had this. So a lot of deep thinking. Another piece that teachers have said is kids are talking about math in a way they've never talked about before, and they're excited about math. I think one of the great pieces we have with the math coach is she's able to capture those pieces, and she's easy, has an opportunity to share that out and share the stories. And I remember one email was sent out that said, "I cried today teaching math." And the teacher said, "I didn't cry because I couldn't do it." She said, "My kids left and I cried because my kid who never understands mathematics jumped up and said, 'This is the best day ever. I love math.'" And so emotionally, the teachers are working extremely hard, and they're seeing these things that are developing in students, which is really encouraging to help them. So some parent successes we've heard back for K-5 is a better understanding of the content through the family letter and the activities that they send home at the K-5 level. That they see a transfer of problem-solving strategies to home situations. There are productive family conversations as the students are getting better at explaining their thinking when engaging in math at home. An increased discussion about the models for math concepts between teachers and parents, and the online component during the distance learning period. Recently it's come up that it's nice that the students can work in their pathway and give them an opportunity to work at the level that they're at and engage in that learning. So when we talk about student successes at the middle levels, again, we see an improved ability to solve real world problems, a greater conceptual understanding about the math concepts, increased understanding of the practices and the Common Core standards. They also have established routines for learning that allow more attention to understanding the mathematics standards and how it applies to real world. And mathematical discourse has increased in all math classrooms. And that discourse has become more meaningful and productive. Ellen expressed an ability to, it's not a one-word answer anymore, that students are able to talk about their understanding and their thinking, and allowing for students to have the engagement and the discussions back and forth across the classroom has been really positive. So the teacher successes are the greater understanding of the concepts behind the mathematics and the greater efficacy in facilitating the understanding for students. That's an area where people get very nervous about, do I know enough about this mathematical concept to hold that conversation with our students? And a greater balance of the three components of rigor, the conceptual understanding, the procedural skill, and the fluency and that application to real life. This program lends itself to real life applications where teachers often had to stretch it a little bit or really have to do some digging to figure out how it relates to real life. And then an increased attention to all 8 of those 8 effective mathematical teaching practices that I shared with you before. So parents at the middle level have expressed an increased discussion with their children about mathematics. They're noticed that their students were able to apply math to problems at home, and their discussions with teachers around mathematical concepts and best ways to support children at home learning in those conditions has been a parent success and a positive that we've seen. So again, I'm going to keep going with our student successes through CPM up at the high school. Phil Rossetti has been wonderful, and his directors, department leaders at the high school have been working really hard with this curriculum. They again see the kids recognize an improved ability to solve the real world problems. This curriculum is centered around real world applications, greater conceptual understanding of the mathematical concepts, increased understanding of the practices. Those are really outlined in their new program. And students working together in teams and collaborating on the mathematical process has been amazing to see. This means students will be better prepared for the workforce that requires teamwork, collaboration, and cooperation. So some teacher successes at the high school level is seeing students work on solving problems themselves, which means that the role of the teacher has changed. Rather than teaching and being the provider of all the answers, teachers are encouraging productive struggle, which is one of the 8 effective mathematics teaching practices. And this is has resulted in a richer teaching experience and a greater level of student engagement. Parent successes, they are noticing an increased interest and engagement in mathematics, seeing their students understand mathematics and how it works in real world, and then watching their students interact with their peers more about mathematics has been a parent success on this side. And so some district support that we have provided here has really been focused around professional development, which we outlined early in the year. Just to bring us back a little bit, in June and August, we did a K-12 has been completed. We gave staff, if you remember last summer, the option to come for Ready Math training section 1 in June or in August. Everyone was trained. And our CPM trainers were here for 4 days working with our high school. In October, we had another round of professional development from Ready Math for all K through 8, and CPM, had 2 days because we had an early release on that Thursday, and then we had that go into Friday. So they had 2 more days with CPM mathematics. We did schedule one in February. And we were able to we had the middle school do their training because on the March in-service day, they had separate plans that they were doing. And we were doing the rest of our math training on that in-service day. And unfortunately, as you know, the March in-service day came around, and because of travel restrictions on COVID-19, we did not have our spring training during our in-service day. So at this time, staff have missed the last PD sequence from both of our companies, and those professional development sessions will be made up and brought into the 2021 school year. I wish I could tell you we were going to have them this summer. We don't know the restrictions and when they'll be lifted, but I can assure you both companies have reached out, and when the restrictions have been lifted, they're ready to support us, whether in person or through webinars. And as a math team, we will meet in early May and kind of craft out our best case scenario of how to deliver this professional development to our staff. One of the pieces I feel comforted by, if we had to push this session off until our October in-service day, we know how to open our schools with our Ready Math curriculum and our CPM curriculum. We know that really well now, and we've had 2 rounds of training. So the training that we were going to have this spring was really focusing on some discrete areas identified by our staff members that wanted more professional development in those pieces. So again, I wish I had an answer for you, and I can update you as soon as we know more, but of course, you know, we're in limbo like everybody else for this piece. So the other part, I gotta go back one, sorry about that, is the iReady data. And I think this is an exciting piece, and I was really psyched to come see you guys in person to talk about this, but of course we couldn't do that. But on February 5th, Ready Math was here to work with our middle schools all afternoon. In the morning, we worked with the trainer specifically on iReady data. And that included our special educators, our coaches, Lisa Garno, our standards-based teachers, our RTI teams, and our math coaches. We met together with Ready, and we finalized the reports to use to track trends and data. So one of the components that we were strongly guiding us this year is we know you as a board and community all want the data to be able to look at, see trends, present it in the same way. And so as we started down this road, we made the commitment that we were going to have everyone in the room to make this decision and stay with it so that our data sets are the same across all of the school buildings. And so through that work, we did determine the scores for tiered levels of support. There are many reports you can use. We worked with our school psychologists as well to say, what are the numbers needed for an RTI referral, for a special education referral, so we are all on the same page, and what does that mean? So all of those scores were determined. We also had a plan, we created a plan for all staff to use the decisions that were made above. And we also wanted to make sure that we would be providing equity of services and support across the RSU based on this data. So I was able to provide in-person discussions and data sets for most of our schools. We obviously got shut down, but I do have them ready to go, and both principals at the middle schools have their own data with their supports and the tiered level. But I'm going to just share with you quickly what it's going to look like a little bit. So if I go to the fall data, and when you receive this PowerPoint, all of you can click and go through every single one of these if you'd like. I just want to give you a little bit of a preview. And I got so excited about this. Chris and Christine laughed at me, but I already queued up my slides for spring when we took the spring diagnostic, which we won't have, but I was ready to go. I just want you to know that. This one right here is in a snapshot, and I just want to talk to you a little bit. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger for you. No, it's not going to let me. But you will see each of the schools listed. And I'm getting smaller. I don't know. Is it getting smaller for you?
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back. Sorry about that.
I could see the first one.
I'm trying. There we go.
There we go.
So tier 1. So students who, we look at the national norm of the test that they are taking. Students who fall between the 26th percentile and the 100th percentile are considered tier 1. In our minds, this is where students are receiving instruction in their regular education classroom differentiated for what they need. So if I'm looking at the primary school right now, if I was to take the entire primary school together, 79% of their students for mathematics are in tier 1. Tier 2 is our 11% to 25% range. We see that we have 11% of students in Wyndham Primary School in mathematics. Those are students that should have some type of intervention, whether that be Title I or whether that be with a math interventionist during wind time, but someone else has a set of eyes on those kiddos to make sure they're getting the extra support that they need. Our tier 3 are any students that fall between the 0 and 10 percentile. Those students are traditionally already in special ed, or they're in our special ed referral process. And when we went back and looked at all of the names of students in these tiers, they fell exactly where they should be. What these tiers are going to allow us to do is to make sure that we have eyes on those students that need Title I intervention or an intervention at middle school, and to make sure we're not overdoing the interventions for those students that truly just need differentiation in their classroom. And so I was able to go to Manchester, Wyndham Primary, and Raymond Elementary School, and we not only looked at the data as a whole as a district, we went down and broke it down into a school. So for example, this is Raymond Elementary School. And so Raymond was able to look at just their data, and we broke it down the same way. So if I am looking here in first grade in the fall, 80% of our kiddos in mathematics fell to the tier 1 level. So you can see how the numbers break down. What this does allow us for is to, when we do a diagnostic again, is to look where the greatest need is for Title II support and for Title III, for Tier 3 support. So if we see these bubbles, we should be able to adjust our interventions that we're giving to a specific grade level at a specific building. And so because the data sets are going to be recognized the same way all the way through, you as a board and community will be able to see trends that we see and delivered in a way that is easily recognized not only on a district level, but on a school level. And then at the school, we break it down further into the grade level.
Mhm.
I also walked our staff through pulling up their own report. So pull up your classroom report, set the parameters to what we have determined as a district, and had the teachers take a look at their individual classrooms. And so we were able to have those great discussions, not only at the grade levels at the schools, but then down to the individual teachers. And so we are really excited moving forward to look at this data the same way and to be able to put the supports in that we need to do. So you will notice in the fall, there's no kindergarten scores. You might remember that we do not do a diagnostic on kindergartners in iReady until January. And so when you look at the winter scores, you will see that there is data for our kindergartners in that piece. So when you look there, you have a fall link and you have a winter link. Does anyone have any questions on the iReady data before I go further into this?
I can't see anybody, so I can't tell.
Okay, so I can't see everybody, so please just shout at me. And again, that's where we landed at when we were closing schools. This is what I was up to, planning to work with staff. So challenges to inform future goals. So we will, in moving forward, the pacing and the gaps and the prerequisite skills, we're going to have gaps. There is no doubt about it with this closure. And our message to staff has been, breathe. We are going to take students where they are when they come in, and we will support them with what we needed. We are going to be continuing to communicate with our families. We will continue the teacher professional development and content and practice, and the effective use of the diagnostic data. Staff are usually not excited about data, but I have to say when we were looking at it this way, this was making sense to them. And then the fact that the data sets that they were looking at their individual classrooms already connected their students to their pathway. Teachers didn't have to think and do that, was a really great discussion and a great option for our teachers. Also next year, I connected with Phil Rossetti today. We will be extending the coursework and the textbooks to extend to Algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, and statistics as part of our plan. One thing my coaches have said, and I totally agree with them, is, and we've already said this to staff who have reached out, we need to treat year 2 as a continuation of year 1 of implementation.
Yes.
And often my phrase this year when working with staff on Ready Math, when we were problem solving, is remember it's year 1. It's year 1 of implementation. So I'll need one of those buttons to keep reminding staff to not feel too much pressure, especially after what we are going through right now in this distance learning piece. Let's see, I think that are all my slides here. Can I answer any questions on this piece? So I guess our challenges, just to kind of put that piece in a nutshell, is number 1, of course, it's brand new. The continuation, staff continue to ask, are we going to still have professional development with Ready Math, with CPM? And yes, the answer of that is going to be, of course. What is it you need? We will get the training for you. Our math coaches are honed right in on working with teachers who are struggling maybe with a lesson. They're doing model lessons. They're looking at data. They're helping with pacing. We have been checking and adjusting with staff on our pacing guides, and we're able to, when we do come back, understand where do we leave off and where should we think our students should be when they come in. And to do no harm to any student coming back in any of our subjects, but to be working with where they are, let's fill in some gaps and let's continue to move forward. I think the biggest challenge for our middle school staff, and you should have seen a communication come out from both of our administrators, that we have always asked that we stay with the core program. We are asking that they can use some other tools to help with some of those concepts and skills. We are not going away from the concepts and skills at each grade level that is going to be taught in Ready Math this spring, but we are allowing them to differentiate with some other tools that might be more effective with students, because the biggest part about Ready Math is the discourse, those small groups. They tried really, really hard to stay right with it, and they need a little bit of wiggle room, which we have granted under the guidance of our math coach. And she is guiding them and outlining grade levels and which are the concepts that they're going to end the year with, so that we can all be going forward in the same direction and not have it splintered all over the place. So that was a lot, and I apologize for all those words on those slides. This is new for us to present over Zoom, but I am happy to answer any questions or take any feedback. Again, I couldn't do this without the two math coaches on the ground and Phil Rossetti at the high school, who is a great advocate. I also find that teachers are being really open and responsive to problem solving and stating what they need. We needed more manipulatives. We'll get you more manipulatives. I need some more time to figure out the timeline. We're going to help you. What do you need?
Mhm.
And that will continue to be our mantra as we move forward into year 1.5, I guess I'll call it. I'm not quite sure. So
Scott?
I'll mute and I can take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Christine. I was actually looking forward to listening to this. I do have a question for you. I know that, personally speaking, my daughter, who is in 8th grade, she's learning, I think she just texted me, multi-step equations. She's having a much harder time with it, with the distance learning. And I would imagine that the teachers are also having a harder time maybe trying to teach it. Can you kind of elaborate on that? What challenges are they facing, as well as the students?
Absolutely, Scott, your daughter is right. I have an 8th grader and I'm living the same dream as you. So when we teach, our pure teaching is we're presenting on a concept, we're having discussion, we're reading our kids' body language. You know who's sitting there, who isn't getting it. And sometimes you prod and say, Scott, what are you thinking? And you can bring that out. That is lost to us right now. And our teachers are struggling with that a lot. They are absolutely trying to do everything that they can. And we recognize that the content we're covering is not going to be as solid as it was if we were in the classroom. And so all the way through the grade levels, we know when we begin in next year, we are going to be reviewing, we're going to be seeing where kids are, and do not let her panic. That's my biggest thing is, students, we are going to embrace you when we get back, and we're going to start with where you are, and we are trying our best, and our teachers are doing the same thing, Scott. They, our message is don't beat yourself up. You are doing the best that you can, and there's going to be no magic that we can create that's going to replicate or ever take the place of a teacher in a classroom, Scott. So I think as a dad, keep reminding her, you're doing a great job. You're getting some of these concepts, you're getting exposed to it, and your teachers are going to bring you back to where you need to be. There is not one teacher at that high school, middle school, who isn't under the understanding of it's going to be a different start in the fall. And we are going to work really hard to get you where you need to be. I can imagine, when you're thinking, okay, so let's think big things like the SATs. What is it my kids need to have to be successful in next April, that those teachers are going to be really creative in helping kids achieve where they need to be and not leave anybody behind. But it's hard, Scott. We recognize that, but this is where we are. And the other thing I keep reminding myself sometimes and our teachers is, this is global. This isn't just RSU 14. This isn't just Cumberland County. This is all over that we're seeing this. And so I think put our energies into making sure we're okay, connecting with our students, reminding them to keep persevering, and we're going to all get through this. And Molly, I want you to hear that loud and clear as well. So, and Delaney wants to check in and make sure you're still running so you feel good about yourself. So
All right. Thank you, Christine.
you're
Mark?
welcome, Scott.
Christine, two things. One is I'm glad to see that year 2 is going to be a continuation of year 1, which will be great. And everybody, I'm sure, will have a much more comfortable feeling with that. The other thing is I am so thrilled that we have this, because for years we have gone through with the state and the government, them changing how we track how we're doing. And we've always wanted to have a system that so we could have a basis. How well are we doing, and how do we know? How do we compare to ourselves? And we haven't been able to do that because the way with all the test scores and everything, it's always been, well, it's the flavor of the day. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the group for putting this together, because I think this is going to be excellent, and it's going to be much easier for parents to be able to figure out, oh, how are my kids actually doing? You know, where do we
Right.
really fall? So
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome, Marge.
Any more questions? Excellent presentation, Christine, in these difficult circumstances. But
Well, I do want to say, Janie, this was perfect because I made my whole family take the 15-year-old out to drive and get hours so that it could be quiet.
yay!
I might just text him and say, "Oh, I've been asked to stay off." Any of you have a 15-year-old trying to get those driving hours?
Oh yeah.
Molly, so you might, Delaney, it's been fun, but Dad can take an hour or so and get some time in. So I will have Carrie send that out to all of you. And of course, if you have any questions regarding the presentation or follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So
Thank you very, very much for
you're welcome.
coming into our Zoom meeting and for
You're welcome.
the great presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to move on to a discussion about the last day of school. Mr. Howell.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenny. And just Christine left, but just want to thank her for giving a great overview. She has been a wonderful cheerleader, as well as our math coaches and working staff are working with staff through the first year of implementation. And they've been working really hard to make some shifts and also make sure that our kids have a rigorous program. So I wanted to thank her for that. Also want to just we have actually extra callers here tonight. So it's exciting that we have some additional people who are sitting in and listening on, and maybe just the item listing what the end of school might look like is actually what's drawing some folks in. But really wanted to have an opportunity to talk about with the board how we're going to end the school year, and also to share a proposal for you for how we end out a year that I hope we never have to repeat again in RSU 14. I have the opportunity to connect with Cumberland County superintendents. We meet twice a week. We meet on Wednesdays and we meet on Fridays at noontime, usually for about an hour and a half. And end of the school year has really taken quite a bit of time for us in our discussions over the last, probably 2 to 3 meetings. And additionally, every Friday, I have the opportunity to meet with other regional reps for superintendents with the commissioner, and end of the school year has been a topic for the last 2. So I think it's one of those questions that districts are wrestling with, which is that how do we end and how do we actually bring this school year to a close? And so if this had been a year where we had normal number of snow days and a normal number of closure days, I think we were on day 6, which was the snow day count last time that we looked. We would have been getting out somewhere between June 18, June 19. I think it would be June 19th. Obviously, with us all being out and all of us being affected by this, we need to take a look a little differently as far as how the year closes out. And so one thing that I would like to get some input from the board and really have you weigh in on this would be to end the distance learning model for students on June 11th. And June 11 would have been our last day of school if we had not had any snow days. but to end distance learning on that day. And what I'd like to propose is that we use those last 6 days with staff for a couple different things. One is we need to provide some closure for the year, and how we go about completing final evaluations and connecting with people. That's one component. In addition, making sure that staff have adequate time to close out classrooms and to make sure that they have things that they need either for planning materials for the summer or to complete summer things. But then also, we need to close out the technology for the school year. You as a board have made a tremendous amount of investments in technology over the years. And honestly, I think those investments are what have made our distance learning so successful, is that for families that didn't have a device or availability to a device, we've been able to lend them out to them. We do need to get them back. And we need to get them back because summertime is where we do critical updates. If there's maintenance or warranty issues with the machines, it's an opportunity for us to get them back, to get them repaired, so that they are then ready for the school year. And so also proposing that we look at those 6 additional days as a way that we can slowly pick up those machines or have them returned back to the school, which we're not going to be able to do in mass on any given day, so that we can return those. The tech department can properly sanitize those items and then start their process for their summer work in order to be able to get those things taken care of. So we're gonna need a little bit more time. It's not like in the past where we had a last week of school and we could actually collect materials, we could collect books. Because students were there, we're actually gonna have to come and do it in a very slow process in order to be able to get those items. And then the last thing to consider is that when the kids all left on March 12th, which was a Thursday, there was a workshop day on March 13th. Everybody thought that they were coming back that following Monday. And so we still have students who have items in lockers, and we're gonna need some time with transitioning, again, getting small groups in so that kids can pick up their things, and whether it be in a classroom or in a locker or in other places. And so in essence, that distance learning model would end again on June 11, and then we would use those 6 remaining days for closing out the school year with our staff. So really wanted to get some input from the board before we open it up for questions or other pieces. Again, this has been a constant discussion or a considerable discussion within our regional peers, and what I'm proposing is very, very similar to, I think, what you're seeing for ideas also in other districts. And what I thought was interesting is that we all kind of came to the table the other day to see what each other were thinking, and I think we were all kind of landing in on that same spot. So curious to hear your input tonight.
Pete?
Thank you. I'll just put my input is that I think it makes perfect sense and I'm supportive of it.
Kate? The great?
Thank you. I definitely support this. I mean, in all honesty, by the time we get to June 11, people are going to be tired. Staff is going to be very tired. Parents are going to be tired. It's summertime. The weather's great. I think it's prudent to stop on the 11th. And then I really love the idea of giving those extra days to staff to kind of regroup with materials. I mean, technology aside, they've been working hard for a long time, and just regroup and get their materials together and make their final end of year, whatever that looks like. And who knows what June looks like for any of us, but end of year celebrations with their staff, if there are any. So I am 100% supportive of this.
Marge, and then I have a question.
I agree. I think it sounds like a very reasonable thing to do. So I'm on board.
Great. My question is, how will you, how do you envision the staff getting together? Are you thinking that the limit or the ban on 10 or more people getting together will be?
I don't, Jenny, honestly, at this point, given that the state of emergency has been put out to May 15th and some of the thing, I don't know if we'll have the opportunity to bring staff together. And I think that's another thing we're going to have to plan out is how many people can we have in the building at a time?
Right.
I'm even trying to work through my head, how do we recover 2,000 laptops and make sure that we do that in an orderly fashion? Whether we do it via bus routes, where we do it in reverse, where buses are going out with people on board to collect computers, or whether we're giving certain times and days based upon the first letter of your last name, and that's the day that you're going to come in and return things. So just trying to figure out all of those different parts. But at this point, I don't see, given our current state and current social distancing guidelines and occupancy guidelines, I just don't see how we get people together.
Okay. Jeannie?
Wondered or presumed that the certain number of days required by the state, the max has been waived or the minimum's been waived or something along that line?
As far as student days go, Jenny, you're absolutely right. The number of days has been waived, and the continuity plan, which you approved as a board last week, is what covers you for a number of days.
Okay.
I think the other part that you have going here is that you have a certain number of contracted days with your professional staff and your support staff that you've worked through. And so it's how do we look at some of those days? And I think, honestly, I think our staff are going to need some extra days for just landing and getting materials back and getting themselves ready for the summer. The other thing that's going through the back of my head, and I hate to be the person who's got to say this, but depending upon where we are and where conditions are, we may also need some time for additional professional development for distance learning, depending upon where we are and whether or not we can come back in the fall. So all sorts of things to consider, and the next 4 to 5 weeks are going to tell a lot as far as what things are going to happen moving forward.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, well, Scott.
So for me, this is kind of a no-brainer as well. I'm totally supportive of June 11th. Is this something that we have to vote on?
It's typically it would be a number of days would be a board vote because you're setting the calendar. We're technically going the same number of days based on our continuity plan. However, given the unique circumstances on this, I would prefer that I have a vote from all of you and that we have that in the minutes somewhere so that number one, we can all remember this at some point. But number two, I think as the board is the legal body that sets the calendar, you should also be setting when the last student day is.
And then we will communicate with the union about that. Correct.
And then we'll do a meet and consult with the associations. Yes.
Okay. All right. Are we all set? It looks like it. Everybody's mute. So we're ready to move on. It's now time for public comment about, oops, sorry, Pete raised his hand.
Yeah, sorry. So when would we vote on this then?
It would be May 6th would be our next board meeting.
All right. That seems like a ways away if we wanted to communicate with the public. But I guess it really doesn't matter because that would still be over a month of notice for everyone. But anybody watching tonight or listening tonight will kind of have an idea, and I'm sure word will spread of what our intentions are.
Kate.
I'm just wondering if we do indeed next week have an expulsion, could we not, to Pete's point about notification, just have a regular meeting as well and vote for this so that we could put it out to the public? Just a thought, that's all.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's something we can discuss at leadership, but I see no problem with that. I don't think anybody is in disagreement about the need to do this, so. So unless okay. So let's move on then. It's now time for an opportunity for the public to comment on our budget. If anyone would like to comment, I have the last 4 digits of all of the phone numbers, and I'll call on you by the last 4 digits as soon as if you want to speak. I guess I can just go down one by one and ask if you want to speak.
Jenny, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody too,
Okay, thank you.
so that they can, if they want to.
Okay. It looks like that, nope. Looks like that, that 0976 wants to speak. Is that true?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, how about 2980? Did you want to
That's
speak?
me, Beth TV, just listening.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Okay, and I'm not sure how to do this. I don't have anybody else.
Maybe just ask if anybody wants to
No.
speak.
I'll set pass.
I was about to do that. If there's anyone would like to speak. Okay, 0976. Would you like to speak? Okay. If anyone would like to speak, you would need to let me know, I guess, and you can just say, I need to speak, and then I'll call on you because you'll turn green. But I guess that's it. No one wants to comment.
That was fun. Can we do that once a week?
Thank you. It's hard to know. I wrote down all these numbers for nothing. Okay, so next we will move to our number 9, our budget discussion. So Mr. Howell?
And I just want to start with the board. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I just want to walk us through just a little bit of history of how we've arrived at where we're at right now. And of course, my all right. Hit the wrong button. Let me hit present. And just slide everybody over here. So 2021 budget, and I know the board has had some discussion, and obviously there's been some questions, and we've been on a little bit of a journey. In addition, finance has had an opportunity to look at that, but we're on version 9 tonight. And I did share in your packets version 9, which didn't have a huge number of changes over version 8, but I wanted to bring us back to version 1 to 3, and actually I'm going to take us all the way through the versions just as a reminder of where we restarted. So version 1, which was the very first one, which the board actually never had a chance to see, that was open the door, maintain programming, that was at 7.94%. When the A team actually went through the budget process this year, all the additional requests that were done, the budget was at 9.65%. Again, you never saw this. Open the door plus enrollment changes was at 6.81%. So the first budget that you saw, which was that 6.81% back on February 26th, had a partial music teacher, had a grade 1 teacher, grade 3 teacher at RES, had a partial guidance counselor, middle level school resource officer, and that's actually as a grant, speech therapist, an Ed Tech 3, and then had $100,000 in out of district tuition. So at that time, it was $719,000 worth of additional requests. Version 5 was more of a housekeeping version for us, that after we went through the budget process, we had a chance to go through and do some corrections. And so then the board saw version 6. And version 6 included some salary and benefits adjustments. That was a reduction of $166,000. We made the adjustment because we had budgeted health at 12%. We brought that to 6%. That saved $293,000. And then we also removed a service truck for the bus garage, which is getting near the end of its life. But that was a $470,000 cut from the 6.8, and a little over 1% was cut at that time. Version 7, if we remember back to version 7, the board had a lengthy discussion on pre-K and made the decision to move forward with pre-K. I'm not going to read down through the items, but the overall cost of that pre-K program was $278,552. And again, for those listening in the public, that $278,552 is offset by $253,000 in additional subsidy by the Maine Department of Education. So at that time, we were at 5.43%. Version 8, the board had a chance to look at version 8 last time that we met, and that had some miscellaneous adjustments, which had to do with negotiations and a couple other things. We had a technology reduction of $92,000. We had a reduction of $20,000 in legal services. Stipends we had reduced by $21,000. We've made a reduction in special education of $100,000. We made the reduction of a school bus, and then the track, which was in the budget, I was recoding the track for an additional $308,000 that was cut out. Version 9, which is the kind of the starting point for the discussion tonight, which is the version that we had a chance to talk about in finance the other night. Had a reduction of $4,500 in property and liability. It's just we are starting to get some policy quotes in for our July 1. The reduction of Jumpstart and Boost, and two reasons is that one, we don't think we're going to have summer programming this year. We don't think we're going to have the opportunity even to hold anything. And so to be able to cut that out is, again, it makes sense because it's not a program we're going to access. The $56,000 in technology hardware is a readjustment from the $89,000 that was cut. It was actually too much was cut because of what was being reflected in a lease payment. So that's a correction. And then the addition of a bus, which is the $87,000, an additional cut of $87,982. So where we are right now at this 4.61% is 3.47% of it is reflected in salary increases, professional staff, for our support staff and administrators, and for our health insurance increases. And so if you think about from year to year, to continue on programming with what we would have had, if we just went similar programming to similar program, we would be looking at 3.47%. We do have some enrollment-driven program additions, which are a couple teachers for class sizes. In addition, that includes the speech therapist and an additional special education tech. And then 0.57% for a pre-K program, and that expense being offset by the additional state subsidy, which brings us at this 4.6% increase over last budget. And so one of the things that the board asked for me to take a look at is if we were to go a little deeper into the budget, where would we be looking at as far as additional cuts that we could do and additional changes. So we've been looking at kindergarten numbers coming in, because if you remember, board, last year you added an additional kindergarten position and you did it out of board contingency. That position is still in the budget, and the plan was to have that position go to first grade. Kindergarten numbers aren't spiking currently at the same level that they've been in the past, specifically to last year. And so we're not far from being able to, using the data to say that maybe we do not need that additional teacher that we had in the budget at Wyndham Primary School. Another spot that we took a look at is where we should have our workers' comp insurance fairly soon. We're putting in a $50,000 placeholder as some additional premium that we can reduce out of our insurance. And then the other thing that we could take a look at, and again, let me just back up a little bit. A-Team did have a chance to meet yesterday via Zoom and looked at what are some possibilities, and we were looking at roughly a $300,000 target. You know, what would that possibly look like? So 89,000 of it, actually closer to 100,000, was added on the version 9 that you saw. And these other positions that we looked at is that looking at the possibility of a reduction of an open support position, which is either a math coach or a classroom support position, that we would then have to take a look at which programs are neediest that we then have to go to. So that's where our collective thinking was. I mean, this would be our next step or our next tier of cuts should we head in that position. Now, obviously, the 71,000 for a classroom teacher, if enrollment is at the point where it doesn't bear itself out in needing that position, then we will go ahead and pull that from the budget. The workers' comp premium, again, if our workers' comp numbers come in where we think they might come in, that's an obvious one that we do a savings. The open support position is going to impact teacher supports. And that was shared as a worry with the administrative team as far as how do we actually continue to support teachers as things are coming back. And the other piece to think about is, though it's a worry, it's a position that's away from kids and won't necessarily direct or have an impact on on programs or on class size. It would have an impact on some of our adults. So that's where we're at the moment. So I'm going to go back to stop sharing.
Pete?
Chris, on your presentation, it was the part about where there was a technology hardware adjustment, but then we were correcting that because we'd cut too much. Can you go over that one more time?
Sure, I will. Yeah, what happened is that we looked at technology. We looked at $89,000 worth of technology. And what happened is that we double booked the decrease in 2 different spots. And so what we initially had thought was an $89,000 decrease was actually in reality a $56,000 decrease. And so we do need to make up the other part because that was built in, but version 9 represents that $30,000 still being in there. But it was a lease payment, and so more than just the lease payment was booked in that initial $89,000.
So all right, I'm just trying to figure out how all that works. It sounds like some expense should have been added back, not, where did if we reduced twice and then we had to correct that, shouldn't that be added expense going back in somewhere? When did that occur?
In version 9, it's corrected in version 9. The mistake happened in version 8.
All right, so the version 9 where you're showing us the changes from version 8, I didn't see any kind of a added expense back in. I just saw the reductions.
There was some that was taken in other areas. I would have to go back to Stacy to see where she pulled the others. But she assured me that it was all clean within version 9.
All right. Well, Stacy's pretty good at what she does, so I'll take your word for it.
Marge, and then Christina.
I'm curious because I can't remember where we ended up. Did we, at one point, we took the additional SRO out? Is that still out or is it back in?
It was added, it was never
I can't
taken
remember.
out.
Okay, and the reason I bring it up, if you could make a note to call Barry, I think they've taken it out of their budget. Because we pay for part of it and they pay for the other part of it. So if you could, I had a discussion with my counselor. So if you could just check with Barry, because I think they've removed it from their part of it.
So the 17,000 that's there, Marge, is to complete the position. The rest would be paid for by the grant. The town would not have a component.
But aren't they putting the grant in?
It's combined, they're doing the grant in conjunction with us. It's a shared grant.
Right. Okay, so they're not putting forward any money towards this at all? They're just doing the grant piece? I'm
Correct.
confused.
So it will be our officer.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, now I know why they took it out. I thought we were doing it similar anyway, like we did in the past, which we're not. And my only other comment is that on your last bullet there, I really would not like to see us decrease a math coach or any additional help that's needed in the schools, special ed or anybody else there. That's just a comment.
Christina?
I would guess that your feeling that we're not going to be able to hold summer programs is probably pretty accurate, but just playing optimist for a minute, what would be the latest date, basically, that things, if we were told it was safe to hold school again, that what would be the latest date that could happen and we could still hold these programs, the Jumpstart and Boost?
We
logistically
would need to have things in place in May.
Okay, all right. So you're pretty clear that's not going to happen. I didn't want us to end up in a position where some miracle occurred and we could have had these programs had we had the money, but I think that's pretty
No,
clear.
the other, just to share, Christina, because it's a great question. Part of our discussion is that some of the students that we might have been able to support through whether it be the Jump or the Boost program, we'll hopefully also be serving through pre-K program and being able to then bring them in at a better level or a higher level than maybe they would have come in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question or a comment? Kate, the great.
Is there any change in Lisa's knowledge about special ed students coming in? Any increase in numbers, or you know what I'm saying?
There hasn't been any, the CDS meetings will start up right after vacation. Far as what we know, and Christine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're not hearing anything different in where kids are coming in at. I think the only concern that's been shared is that I don't believe that CDS is providing much, if any, services right now. In fact, I think they've furloughed their workers. And so that's just a concern, is that kids may not be coming in the same level from those services.
My other comment is, and I don't have that in front of me, the reduction that the A team came up with. Could you explain again the supports that might, one is an unfilled position, and did I see a math coach? I'm not looking at it right now.
Yeah, we currently have an open math coach position, and we have someone who's retiring, and it's just whether or not we can afford to fill the position.
I guess my feeling about this is we're going to be starting up hopefully a new year. I hate this word uncharted territory because it's so overused, but kids are going to be coming into school and we don't know where they're landing as far as academics. And I really think that we're going to need as much supports in place to assist teachers and students and everybody. This is, I don't want to say it's going to be a crazy opening, but it's going to be a challenging opening. And I would hate to reduce any supports that might assist. That's my take. Thank you.
Pete?
Okay, Chris, I had a question. When we budgeted for pre-K, we budgeted for 2 teachers, 2 ed techs. And I had brought this up before, but as I'm thinking about it now, some of those students that we're bringing in may require special ed services. And we've talked about this, and the fact that if any of those students need special ed services, we'll get reimbursed by CDS or whoever. But shouldn't we be accounting for any of those specialists in our expense? We'll get the offsetting revenue, but we haven't increased because it's going to require, we're going to be responsible for requiring those people.
Yep.
So whether it's increasing our current special ed staff by 0.1 or 0.2 or whatever it's going to take to cover those needs, shouldn't we be bumping up those
I'm gonna let
positions?
Christine take this.
So in speaking with Lisa, the current thinking, Pete, is that with the staff providing those additional services at Raymond, she would be able to meet the need with the current staff. And if Lisa's on, she can certainly chime in, but we don't need to add additional staff to meet the incoming needs for those 2 pre-K classrooms. If we do need additional support, ed tech support, or something unforeseen, we would be partnering with, through that memorandum of understanding, with CDS, and they would then be helping us meet that need. So with the current, for example, speech and language, any of the students who would come in with we don't know who they are yet and what the needs are, but we think that we could provide that level of specially designed instruction, and whether it's speech, OT, PT, that we could meet that need currently with the staff we have. Again, we'd be partnering with CDS if there's anything above and beyond.
So even if any of the incoming students had one-on-one needs,
If they had a one-on-one, sorry, Pete, go ahead.
No, so we would be able to cover that with our existing staff without.
Not with a one-on-one ed tech. We would be able to cover the speech and language, OT, PT, but if somebody needed a one-on-one adult to support them, that's where we would be working with CDS. For the speech OT PT service, we would bill for the service we're providing. We'd bill CDS and they would pay us at that $100+ per hour rate, whatever their current rate is. For an additional ed tech, when we talked with the person who oversees CDS Reach, she said that they would work with us to either provide the additional ed tech support staff member or provide us the funds so that we could hire and deliver that level of service. So it's going to be through that memorandum of understanding with CDS that all services related special education, CDS is either compensating us for the hourly service we provide with our staff, or they're going to be providing the staff or compensating us to hire an additional staff member.
Mark, oh, did you have more, Pete?
No, I mean, we can't increase the budget once it's passed. So if we have to end up providing a staff member, we're just going to have to find those funds somewhere else, regardless of whether we're being reimbursed or not. We'll just have to pull them from somewhere else, I guess. So
Well,
just make sure that we're thinking about that.
Marge?
Just trying to bring myself up to date here because I'm kind of like back the last time we had meetings with pre-K. I remember the conversations with the powers that be when we had the people in the know there and we're sitting there. And I remember at that time, their recommendation was that those students are not the ones that would be brought in initially. They would not be like a student that needed a one-on-one. And I don't know what we're doing right now. Are we just doing like status quo, like they were going into kindergarten, or do you understand what I'm asking, Christine?
So you're asking about the level of need.
Yes.
Okay. So, we could certainly, at this time, the current proposal is that we take those applications and we have those number of slots, 4 per classroom, designated for children with identified special needs, regardless of the level of need, that through our partnership with CDS. And, we would have to collaborate with them to make sure that we could meet whatever the identified needs are. But that through a conversation, it was felt that if those kids need that level of service, let's get them in, let's start partnering with those families, let's meet that need when they're 4, and because they're coming the next year to kindergarten regardless.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I wasn't sure because I know the conversation last time and I wasn't sure where we were at this point. Okay, thank you.
Right, and again, it's hard because we don't know who will be expressing an interest, the level of needs. We want to make sure that the program, we're set up, and through that partnership with CDS, we're delivering all of the services that every child would need.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. A flash. Is that you, Kate? No, you're sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. It was me. Just process-wise now. I mean, we've seen or heard about version 9 and all the jazz that Chris has presented. So in this conversation, I mean, my expectation is hopefully we come to a resolution tonight about where we land with this budget, what we can live with. So I don't know, like, as far as this discussion, where we go from here. Maybe Pete, I see your hand up. Maybe you have some thoughts as finance chair.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I was just going to chime in because we did meet as a finance committee the other night and went over this. And part of that discussion, we were looking at version 9, which was roughly a 4.6% increase on the expense side. And I asked Chris, break that down for me, just really in layman's terms. We know that 0.6 of that increase is the pre-K, which is completely offset or within $25,000 offset on the cost. So really, you're looking at a 4% budget increase. And where is that coming from? And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 3.4% of that is coming from increases to our negotiated contracts with our teachers and support staff, with benefits and so forth. So that was 3.4%. So really, we're not looking at that much of anything else. And our discussion centered on the fact that really, what are we trying to accomplish? And we want to keep our staff. We've got a great staff here in the RSU, and we want to be competitive with our peer groups, our surrounding towns, and these increases are accomplishing that. And so if we wanted to go any lower than what's proposed in version 9, then we'd either be saying that we don't want to bring our teachers' wages up, or we're okay with sacrificing some positions, having some positions cut. And I think it was the consensus of the committee that we were all okay presenting the budget as is based on those facts. Chris, did I miss anything?
No, you were spot on.
Just to be clear, the version 9 does not include the A-team discussion cuts. Is that
Version 9 includes the cuts to Jumpstart and Boost. Those pieces that are in there. And Pete, I just want to clarify the 56,000 because I know I did not explain it correctly. In the original $89,000 cut, 89,000 wasn't actually cut out of the version because of a lease payment. And
All
so
right, that makes more sense.
Stacy cleaned it up, and it was an error on that end. So that's why the additional 56 is showing there. So version 9 is correct with that tech. I know I didn't explain it correctly, so I want to make sure I was clear on that. So it includes, Kate, just those two pieces. We did have some discussions yesterday with enrollment numbers, and again, if enrollments don't bear out and we have a little time before you vote, then I would say we would cut that first grade position because we're not going to need it because of enrollment, which will drop it another 70,000 in the budget. The math part, we need to support our teachers with a math coach and those other things. So that was the general feeling, is that we don't want to do it, but if we have to go deeper, otherwise it's going to get into class sizes or programs that students are directly interacting with and receiving benefit. And whenever we make cuts, we try to go farthest away from the kids on that.
But I just want to be clear that you had discussed that. I'm looking at version 9 that you had posted,
Yep.
but I'm not seeing the A-team list. So I don't have any. Do you know what I'm saying? The math coach. There was one slide or something that you showed, but in any event, in version 9, I have the property and liability. I have the Jumpstart just for the 1 year. I have technology, hardware, and the bus.
Yep.
But it doesn't include that. I think there was a line that said coach and.
No, so that would be the first grade teacher, the 50,000 for workers' comp, which we would go ahead and do anyway if that happens, and then the reduction of an open support position. There's an additional $200,000 there that isn't reflected in version 9. If the board said tonight that's the direction we're going in, then we would then assemble a version 10 and go in. I didn't bring it in as a version 9 because I interpreted as a what would this look like if we went deeper?
Right. Given our illustrious finance chair's explanation, I am comfortable with version 9. I think it makes very good sense. It's something that I could certainly explain to the public, and I think being part of the negotiating team, as we all know, and as Pete has expressed, we want to retain and attract excellent staff, and we need to continue on that path, and I think this budget will allow us to do that, or at least move in the right direction. So I am in support of version 9. Thank you.
Okay, Marge? You have to unmute, Marge. Nope.
I think I was unmuted and I muted myself. Oh, well. So if we, basically, if we agree on all of this tonight, what we will be getting is not necessarily the other version 9, the version 9 you're talking about, which will be version 10. This sounds silly. So you'll be coming with the version 10, which will be, so we'll get a new community assessment and a new explaining your budget piece of paper.
So there's already a version 9 explaining your budget. It's in your board packet. And I can go ahead and I will drop a community assessment in for version 9. It's the same one that I think I shared the other night at finance.
I think it's probably a little different because the one I have, because remember we made some changes. I don't remember if the tax implications were the same because we were kind of moving up, moving down.
Yeah, do you want me, do you want me to share my screen right now and bring it up?
Yeah, please.
I can do that. I have it on standby right here. So Marge, this is the version
Yes.
9 that we just took a look at.
Okay, and that's not the version 9 that I printed last time.
Nope, so this was finalized at about 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. That's
Fresh
why I
ink,
don't.
fresh ink on it.
Very good. Excellent.
So we could, again, with those possibility of enrollment and the workers' comp, drop it down a little bit. So can I just talk about next steps for a second? Because we're in, I hate to use it, but we're in uncharted territory where we were supposed to have been facing the public or going before the public on May 20th to then talk about doing our public budget meeting. With the election being pushed off to July 14th, this is going to push that meeting off until the middle of June. There still is some question legislatively if things don't improve, whether or not a public budget meeting will even be held this year. So we'll have to wait and see, and whether or not our budget just may go directly to the voters instead of that town hall type meeting.
Right.
So we'll wait and see with that. The other thing, which is a piece of legislation on the governor's desk as a emergency or an executive order, is would allow for you as a board to vote and approve a budget, and then for you as a board to then pass that budget to your local municipalities for their purposes of getting an idea of what they need to do to set tax rates. Previously, they can't set a tax rate unless they actually have an approved budget in hand. However, not knowing where we're going in the election, it would then allow them to then start setting tax rates that to the point where we can pass a budget because we can bring the public together. They would be able to do that. But it looks like at this point, you would be voting on May 6th to approve the budget, and then going to a June public budget meeting, a July 14th to go to the voters. Just something a little different this year is that July 1, because we won't have a budget that's passed, we'll be starting on this current year's budget, on the 20 budget. And then whenever we can get people to the polls and pass a budget, then we would start the 21 budget. So a little different this year, but the advice we've all received is to continue on in your budget processes. Have your vote when your board vote when they feel like that they're ready to do so. And then we can then use those numbers and inform our local municipalities of what they could possibly expect.
Okay, could I have a head nod about support of this budget, or anybody want to talk? Okay, thank you. And then we will have a vote next time. But if you have any questions, this is the time to bring them up so we can. Right. Seeing none, we're ready for the superintendent's report.
Sure, I have a couple things that I want to share with you tonight, and I think it's been, one of the questions that we've heard about the most since we actually went ahead and closed, and it's the question about what's happening with end of the year activities. So everything from 8th grade graduation / step-ups to graduation to prom to awards nights. So people are actively working right now to make some of those things happen. So for instance, there's a group right now working on a July prom and are working to secure a facility. So I think prom was scheduled for May 7th or May 9th. I had it on my social calendar, but given that nobody will be able to come together looking at that possible date. There's also a group of individuals who've started working on plans for an alternate graduation in either the last week of July or the first weekend in August. And I think part of that is going to be dependent upon rain, but we hosted back in 2013 a graduation in the Wyndham High School Stadium, which the year that the Cumberland County Civic Center across arena was under construction. So we have some experience doing this. Ryan has a tremendous amount of experience because South Portland did all their graduations outside. But if we can, or we're allowed to have community together in July, last week of July, first week of August, then we will be holding an outdoor graduation at Wyndham High School. So the only thing that will hold that back is if the governor's office or the CDC says that at that time that it's not safe for us to do that. But that's one of those things as we kind of put the close out this year. That's one of the things that I think we need to try to pull off as an RSU is that face-to-face opportunity. So whether or not students are going to shake hands and then receive a diploma, do a fist bump, do an elbow, do a foot, whatever, that opportunity. And I know Ryan desperately wants to make sure that he has that opportunity to award students their diplomas at the conclusion of the school year. The other thing I've noticed this week is that it seems like it's been montage week where different buildings have done a lot of time putting together photographic essays, if you want to call that, with teachers and signs and pictures. I think our staff most of us are, we're missing the kids, and they had the chance to go ahead and express that. Also, I'm not sure if you saw it, I watched it this morning, but Channel 13 did a nice story on Eileen Pelletier and Beth Peavy at Raymond Elementary School, and Eileen's virtual classroom and what she's doing each day with her students. I'll send that link out to the board so that if you haven't seen it already, just a great representation of what our teachers are doing and how they're working to continue to keep kids engaged. The last thing I'll end with, and this seems to be a Jordan Small tradition, but Jordan Small once again took first and second place in the Southern Maine Middle School stock market game. And so congratulations to all those. In fact, I think first place, which was Braden Fitch, and Harrison, I think his last name is Benke. I think Braden is Jack's grandson. So Jack must be pretty proud to have his grandson be winning that first place. The other thing I also just want to end on is, or two things. One is it was nice to see the Jordan Small Greenhouse supplying food this week for the feeding program for what's we're receiving from our families. And also it was kind of fun this week to listen to Drew give instructions on how to make French toast as part of his morning announcements and sending that out to kids. So I think people are looking for some creative ways to still connect. So next week is April break, and we will officially be going on April break for teachers and for students starting on Friday through the following week. We have some messaging that will be going out to the community. We have been strongly encouraging our staff, and we'll be encouraging our families to get off technology and to do some other things as a family to get outside during this time when we have a break, because I think all of us have been feeling that we've been living our lives to the little boxes on our screens. And it would be good to the extent that we can to take a break from that. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Chris. I did see the Eileen and Beth's video, and it was terrific. Someone else posted it, and it was great. Okay, I would now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now we have to have a roll call, please.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Marge Cavoni,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yep.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Janie Cummings.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.